Every year, for 6 years, I watched my husband pack the same green duffel bag, kiss me on the forehead, and tell me he'd be back Sunday. Every year, I believed him. I don't know when exactly I stopped believing him. It wasn't a single moment. It was more like, you know how ice melts? Not all at once. Just slowly, quietly, until one day you reach for it and there's nothing left. I'm a physiotherapist. I run a small private clinic in Oakville, Ontario, about 40 minutes west of Toronto. I've had the clinic for 9 years. I built it from a one-room rental above a pharmacy to a 4-treatment room space with 4 staff and a full client roster. I say that not to brag, but because you need to understand what that means. That clinic is not just my job. It is my mornings before the kids wake up, my evenings after they go to bed, my weekends behind a laptop doing billing, my vacations that aren't really vacations. It is everything I poured myself into for a decade. My husband's name is Joel. Joel is a project manager for a mid-size construction firm in Hamilton. Good salary. Stable. Not the kind of man you look at and immediately think, there's trouble. He's the kind of man who remembers to bring a host gift to dinner parties and always waves at the neighbors. He coached our son Callum's hockey team for 2 seasons. He's charming in the way that becomes invisible after a while. You stop noticing it because it's just always there, like furniture. We've been married 11 years. The boys' trip started in year 5 of our marriage. His friend group, 4 guys he'd known since university, started doing an annual long weekend away. Quebec City the first year, Whistler the second. Sometimes they stayed in Canada, sometimes they crossed the border. 4 days, maybe 5. Early June, usually. They'd rent a house or book a few hotel rooms, play golf, drink too much, talk about the old days. Normal enough. I never thought much of it. I'd spend those weekends catching up on clinic admin, taking the kids to Callum's games, visiting my parents in Mississauga. I had a full life. I didn't need to audit his. But here's the thing about having a full life. Sometimes it makes you a very convenient person to deceive. Because while I was doing all of that, managing the clinic, managing the kids, managing the mortgage, the RRSP contributions, the family calendar, Joel was having a lot of very good time that had nothing to do with his university friends. I found out by accident. It was the March before what would have been his 7th trip. I was doing our tax prep. I use an accountant, but I always compile the documents myself. It's a habit I picked up from my dad, and I was going through our joint cheeking statements when I noticed something. A hotel charge. The Rosso, Muskoka, September 14th. September 14th was not a boys' trip weekend. September 14th was the weekend I had taken Callum and our daughter Petra to my in-laws' place in Barrie because we were having the hardwood floors redone. Joel had stayed home, or so I thought. The charge was $487. I sat there with the printout in my hand and I just looked at it. I didn't feel rage right away. I felt something stranger than that, a kind of sharpening. Like everything around me went slightly more into focus. I didn't say anything. I put the statement in the folder and finished the prep and sent everything to our accountant. And then I started paying attention. I went back further, not just the joint account. I also had viewing access to our joint savings, which we'd set up years ago for house repairs and the kids' RESP accounts. I wasn't supposed to be the one managing it month to month. That had become Joel's job once I took was on Kingston 2 years back. He handled the transfers, kept track of the balance. The balance was lower than it should have been. Not dramatically, not by tens of thousands. Just consistently, quietly lower. Month by month, little withdrawals I hadn't been tracking, transfers into an account I didn't recognize. I had to request the full statements from our bank branch to see the detail. The woman at the desk was very kind. She printed everything out without asking why. Over 18 months, a little over $19,000 had been moved out of our joint savings into an account I had no information about. $19,000. I drove home in complete silence. I remember stopping at a red light on Lakeshore and watching a man walk his dog across the street, a big golden retriever just wagging its entire back half, and thinking, I need to be like that dog right now. I need to not feel this yet. I didn't cry until I got into my clinic, after hours, and sat on the treatment table in room 3 with the lights off. Then I cried for about 20 minutes. And then I stopped, and I thought, what do I actually know, and what do I only think I know? That distinction mattered. I had a mystery hotel charge and a shortfall in our savings. That was damaging, but it wasn't everything. I needed to know what I was actually dealing with before I made a single move. I told no one, not my sister, not my best friend Paulette, not my mother. The urge to call someone and say, I think my husband is lying to me, was almost physical. But I held it, because I knew once I said it out loud, I couldn't control where it went. Joel and I continued our normal life. He made dinner on Thursdays like he always did. He came to Petra's school play and filmed the whole thing on his phone. He kissed me goodnight, and I smiled back and felt like I was performing in a play of my own. In April, I hired a private investigator. I want to be clear about why. It wasn't vindictiveness, it was practicality. I needed documentation. If there was something real here, I needed evidence that would hold up. Not suspicions, not a bank statement that might have an innocent explanation, not a feeling. I needed facts. The investigator's name was a woman named Faye. She came recommended through a family lawyer I'd quietly called from my clinic phone. Faye was in her 50s, very direct, very professional. She told me what she needed from me: Joel's schedule, his workplace, his vehicle, the dates and destination of the upcoming boys' trip in June. I gave her all of it. The trip was supposed to be 5 days, Wednesday to Sunday, second week of June. Joel told me they were going to Prince Edward Island this year. Mal found a house rental right on the water, he said. It's going to be incredible. I nodded. I said that sounded like a great time. Faye followed Joel from the Wednesday he left. He drove to Pearson and took a flight. That much was true. What was not true? The destination. He didn't fly to Charlottetown. He flew to Calgary. I don't know why Calgary specifically hit me so hard. Maybe because it was so specific, so deliberate. You don't accidentally fly to Calgary. You book it, you plan it. You look someone in the eye and tell them you're going east when you're going west. Faye sent me photographs on Thursday afternoon. Joel outside a hotel in the Beltline neighborhood of Calgary. Joel at a restaurant patio. Joel with a woman. I looked at her for a long time. She was about my age. Dark hair pulled back. She was laughing at something he said, and in the photo she looked relaxed in the way people look when they're somewhere they feel completely comfortable. Not a stranger. Not someone new. Someone who knew him well. I sent Faye a message. Do we know who she is? She got back to me the next morning. A name, a LinkedIn profile, a place of work. Her name was Tessa. She worked in HR at a company in Calgary. She was originally from Guelph. She and Joel had gone to university together. I put my phone down on the kitchen counter and stood there for a while. Joel had kept in touch with her for 11 years. Long enough that nobody would question it. Oh, she's just an old friend. Long enough for it to become invisible. I thought about how many times I'd been in the same room while he texted her. How many work calls he'd taken privately. How many times I'd assumed I understood the shape of his life because I was busy living my own. I did not call him. I did not text him anything unusual. I sent him a message that said, "How's PEI?" Hope the weather's good, and he sent back a photo of ocean water and said, "Beautiful out here, missing you guys." And I stared at that message for about 3 minutes before I put the phone in my desk drawer. When he came home on Sunday, he smelled like the same cedar shower gel he always used. He hugged the kids. He brought Petra a stuffed puffin toy, the kind you'd buy at an airport gift shop. He'd thought of that. He'd bought a prop. I made tea. We sat on the back deck and he told me about the trip. The house, the lobster dinner, a round of golf in the fog. Every detail specific and convincing. He's good at details. I'd always thought that was one of the things I loved about him. We didn't fight that night. I asked him a few gentle follow-up questions, just to see. He answered without hesitation. He'd clearly thought it through. I went to bed and lay there in the dark, and I thought about Petra's stuffed puffin, sitting on her nightstand down the hall, and I thought about $19,000, and I thought about Tessa laughing on a patio in Calgary, and I decided exactly what I was going to do. The first thing was the lawyer. I'd already spoken briefly with the family lawyer who referred me to Faye, but now I booked a full consultation. Her name was Rhonda. She was thorough and calm and laid out exactly what I needed to know. In Ontario, marital assets are generally divided equally upon separation, but documentation of financial misconduct matters. Proof of dissipated assets. Money spent on an affair without the other spouse's knowledge can be raised in equalization proceedings. The $19,000 was relevant. Faye's documentation was relevant. I took notes on everything. The second thing was the money. I didn't move anything dramatic. I didn't empty accounts. But I did open a personal account in my name, only at a different bank, and I began directing a portion of my clinic's income there rather than into our joint account. Slowly, consistently. Rhonda had advised me to keep my own financial documentation clean and current. I did. The third thing was Paulette. I told her in July. We sat in her backyard in Burlington with glasses of iced tea, and I told her everything. She listened without interrupting, which is rare for Paulette. She's the kind of person who normally can't help herself, and when I finished, she was quiet for a moment, and then she had said, "What do you need from me?" I told her I might need a witness. At some point, when the time came, she said, "I'll be there." Summer passed. Joel coached Callum's last season of rep hockey. We went to my in-laws for the long weekend in August, the whole family, everyone laughing around the fire pit. I sat there and watched him with his mother, Elaine, watched him be easy and present and warm in the way he could be, and I thought about how much of a person is visible and how much isn't. How you can spend a decade with someone and still be looking at a fraction of who they are. By September, I had everything Rhonda said I needed. Faye's documentation, including photographs and a timeline. The full bank statements showing the withdrawals. A record of the hotel charge from March. Screenshots of text messages. Ones I found by looking carefully through a backed-up phone he'd upgraded from and left charging in the basement. I won't go into all of what those messages said. But I'll say this. It wasn't a recent thing. Based on the messages, Tessa and Joel had been meeting at least twice a year for 4 years. The hotel in Muskoka in September was one time he'd improvised. I was supposed to be gone a full week, not a weekend. He'd gotten careless. Careless was how I found out. Careless was how this ended. I chose a Saturday in late September for the conversation. Callum was at a friend's house. Petra was at my sister's for the afternoon. I had asked Paulette to come and wait in her car down the street. I had also called Elaine the week before. That part was hard. Elaine is a woman I have genuine respect for. She's direct and she loves her grandchildren, and she has always been fair to me. Calling her felt like the hardest thing I had to do in all of this. But I called her because I wanted Joel to understand that the people in his life who loved him, not just me, were seeing this clearly. I told her I had something serious to discuss with Joel, and I wanted her present because it involved decisions about the family. I did not tell her exactly what it was. She drove down from Barrie. When Joel came home that afternoon, he found me at the kitchen table. Elaine was sitting across from me. Paulette was on the couch in the living room. He stopped in the doorway. "What's going on?" I placed a folder on the table. Inside, the bank statements with the transfers highlighted, Faye's written summary and photographs, the hotel receipt, a printed timeline. "Sit down, Joel." He looked at his mother. He looked at Paulette. He looked at me. And for a fraction of a second, just a fraction, the composure slipped. Then he sat down. "Joel, I know about Tessa. I know you've been meeting her twice a year for at least 4 years. I know about the money. I know about Calgary. I know about the Muskoka Hotel in September. I know you bought Petra a stuffed puffin at the Calgary airport and told us you'd been in PEI." I paused. "I know everything I need to know." He said nothing. Elaine said his name very quietly. He said, "It's not." And then he stopped. Started again. I was going to end it. I was going to— "Please don't," I said. "I'm not looking for that conversation right now." What followed was not a dramatic confrontation in the way people might picture it. There was no screaming. There was no dish throwing. There was crying, mine eventually, though I'd told myself I wouldn't. There was a long silence after Elaine said something to Joel in a low voice that I couldn't fully hear. There was Joel, at one point, leaning forward with his elbows on the table and covering his face with his hands. And then there was what I actually said, which was this: "I've already spoken with a lawyer. I want you to move out by the end of the month. We'll figure out the parenting schedule with a mediator. The financial stuff, including the $19,000, will be handled through the formal process. You should get your own legal advice." He looked up. "You've already—" "Yes." He had thought he still had time. That's what I saw in his face in that moment. He had thought he was still inside the version of things where he had options, where he could confess and manage the narrative and decide what happened next. He wasn't. Paulette drove Elaine home that evening. Elaine hugged me at the door for a long time and didn't say anything, which was exactly right. That night I sat on the back deck where we'd had tea in June while he told me about fictional lobster dinners, and I let myself feel the full weight of it. The years, the clinic money, flowing in every month while he quietly redirected pieces of it elsewhere. The kids who didn't know yet, who would have to be told something. The version of the future I'd been building in my head that had just changed shape entirely. I cried a lot that night. And then I stopped. Joel moved into his brother Derek's place in Stony Creek at the end of September. We told the kids together, the following weekend, using words Rhonda and a child psychologist had helped me prepare. Callum was quiet and then angry. Petra asked if we would still both come to her birthday. We both said yes. The legal process took several months. The $19,000 was addressed in the equalization. Rhonda was thorough. I won't say it was clean or painless. It wasn't either. But it was fair. I don't hate Joel. I want to be honest about that because it would be a simple and satisfying thing to say, and it wouldn't be true. What I feel is closer to grief, and underneath the grief there is something that surprised me, a kind of quiet relief. Like I had been carrying something very heavy without knowing it, and now I'd set it down. My clinic is still mine. My name is on the door. My patients, my staff, my 6-day weeks. Mine. This spring, I knocked a wall down in the front reception area to make the space bigger, something I'd been wanting to do for 3 years. I stood in the clinic on a Thursday evening after everyone had left, dust on my jacket, looking at where the wall used to be, and I thought, yes, that's better.